and your life.
Hi, everybody. I'm Momma Atheist. This is Living Critically, and tonight we have Bionic Dance as our guest, which we're the fuck way she is.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
So, we've done a few shows together, but we'll just do a little teeny bit of an interview before we get into our topic. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I tell theists why they're wrong on video, on YouTube. That's pretty much what I do, what most people know me for, at least online. If you want to know more personal details, well, let's see. I'm a lesbian living in San Diego. I'm left handed and I like cheese.
What kind of cheese, though, like specifically?
Actually, I really like Swiss Emmentaler and Monterey Jack are my favorites, I think. I'm also a bit of a Star Wars nut. There is that, although mostly just 1 through 6. Those are the ones I consider canon, fuck Disney, but all that. So,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell. I'm working on a huge animation project that's going really, really well. And that's about it. I mean, unless anyone has some questions.
Well, I wore my TIE Fighter earrings for you. So.
Oh, cool.
Yes, everybody knows I'm a big Star Wars nerd too, but that's mostly because of my kid. I admit to when I was growing up, I had an older brother that was really into it, and he tried hard to get me into it, but it wasn't until Angel got super obsessed. It's been like his biggest love his entire life. So that really brought me into it. Were you always a fan, like when you were really little, or?
Well, when the first movie was released, it was 1977, and I was a year and a half old, right? So
Yeah.
I don't remember a time without Star Wars. And I remember what the hysteria and the hype was like in the early 80s with all these imitation wannabes, just coming out left and right, like Star Chasers: The Legend of Orin and The Last Starfighter, the Last Starfighter and all that stuff. So, I mean, I've been living, eating, and breathing sci-fi since I was, minuscule.
Very good. Yeah, I remember, there's so many, it was such a huge deal, even though George Lucas never thought it was going to amount to anything. In fact, when he wrote the first one, he had the idea in mind for not only the prequels, but ones ahead, but he didn't really think it was going to go anywhere. And I kind of think that that's why they ended up being better than the new ones, because, he put his heart and soul into it instead of worrying about like the money that was going to come out of it. But that's just
it's funny because the sci-fi animation that I'm working on, the really big project, is sort of, it's like a third Star Wars, a third Star Trek, and a third the Jetsons, if that makes any sense. Like I'm trying
now, is this the same thing as the comics that you're writing?
No, because that is kind of a dead project. I enjoyed it, but I don't know. It's not even my best work. I look at it and I'm not proud of it. Like the characters had really weirdly shaped faces and stuff. What I'm doing right now is so much better. And I mean, I actually am very proud of it. But it's also sort of a setup to what might be a larger story that I'll probably have to continue as a webcomic unless someone from Hollywood sees it and goes, ooh, and throws money at me. But the basic idea is that, it's sort of going to have it to be continued at the end of it. And it's actually going to turn into like, imagine if Star Trek had Star Wars's ships, but with a visual style of the Jetsons or Futurama.
Okay, that's pretty
The
cool.
basic
So
idea.
you don't have an issue like a lot of people fall in line. They're either Star Trek or Star Wars. You love them both.
I used to. I mean, okay, let's put it this way. I definitely prefer Star Wars. And there was a time when I bought into the idea that you had to like one or the other. But also part of why it took me a long time to warm up to Star Trek is that it was very sort of hoity-toity, toffee-nosed kind of bullshit where like everybody listens to classical music or jazz. You never see a guy rocking out to rock and roll, you know, to metal or punk. Everyone wants to be like, oh, look at me, I'm immersing myself in Shakespeare. You know, it wasn't until like Tom Paris in Voyager where you get someone who represented my tastes a little better. I mean, you know, he had that thing in the holodeck with Captain Proton, you know, and he'd do that with Harry Kim. And all of a sudden I'm sitting there going, okay, finally a character I can relate to, you know. But I do like Star Trek's mission of, you know, let's boldly go, let's discover and all of that. And I think that's brilliant. So I think actually there are two shows I would say are a great fusion of both ideas, and that would be both Babylon 5 and The Orville. The Orville especially. The Orville is like if Star Trek had that stick removed from its butt. And I absolutely adore it. So
they can. The thing I like about the Orville, and I'll admit to saying I haven't seen too much of Star Trek, but I'm aware of enough of it to know that the thing I really like about the Orville is that it can laugh at itself and say that this is fucking ridiculous, but it works, you know?
Well, the funny thing about that, I mean, Seth MacFarlane really wanted to make Star Trek, but he was like, well, everyone knows me as the Family Guy guy. No one will accept something from me that's not a comedy. And so he started out making the Orville into like a satire or a parody of Star Trek, right? But then somewhere around the middle of the first season, he just went, fuck it, we're making Star Trek my style. And like the plot started getting a lot more serious and like a lot more introspective and more like Star Trek with the occasional poop or fart joke rather than the whole thing trying to be like Star Trek meets Spaceballs. You know, so and I like that. I mean, in season 2, there were some episodes that were real thought-provoking and even tear-jerkers. And I love the Orville, what he's doing with it. But it also has the Star Wars style fighters that I like, where it's the single seat, high speed, stick and throttle attack fighters. I mean, that was another thing, a hurdle for me getting into Star Trek was, oh my gosh, we're flying by typing. Ooh, you know, I'm like, you know, what if you have to execute a maneuver like that and you're still busy typing in the coordinates? No. You know. Shut up, Dad. But no, seriously, my dad's texting me. But yeah, so like I say, it took me a while to warm up to Star Trek, but I've started like, you know, well, decades ago, I started to enjoy it, but it was an uphill slog, I will admit.
Yeah. No, and I've had plenty of people try to push me to that side, and I've dabbled, but I understand what you mean. There is so much of it that is so just serious, and the keyboard thing, whereas, you know, you look at something like Star Wars, and they don't try to come across too serious in their science and stuff. You can kind of, you know, step back from it enough to enjoy it, whereas I don't know. Sorry.
Well, one thing a lot of people forget to remember is that it's not just science fiction, it's also science fiction, right?
Yes.
And I have to admit, I kind of want to slug people when they start calling Star Wars space fantasy. Fuck off with that shit. Fantasy is Lord of the Rings. But, you know, but even if that weren't the case, it's just like, as long as the universe has some internal consistency, that's really all I need. I mean, whenever someone whinges that the spaceships aren't moving according to exact Newtonian physics, I'm like, dude, just sit back and enjoy a good story. What the hell? You know?
Yeah. Well, with stuff that occurs in space, though, they can get away with a lot more. I find myself like, I have a degree in physics. So if I watch something, I'll admit to a lot of cartoons my son and I will watch together. And I'm like, they're just not physicsing right. It fucking sucks. But when you get into space and you start making shit up, and there's more of a gray area there, it's a little easier to step back and believe it, so to speak, as opposed to, I will admit to be one of those nitpicky people, but with stuff in space, I'm not as much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the project I'm working on right now, it's called Quinn Redshift. And it's, like I said, I'm trying to hark back to that sort of pulp sci-fi thing. where like, Mars has aliens, Venus has hot, sexy women aliens, all of that stuff. And humanity hasn't left the solar system yet. And that's part of the plot, is that Quinn Redshift himself is the first Earthling to manage to get past Mars to Jupiter ever. Right. And of course, Jupiter has how many moons? There are so many possible adventures to be had on just moons of Jupiter alone, never mind the rest of the solar system. And, since I've decided that it's more pulp sci-fi than anything else, I can make up whatever the hell I like about these moons. They can be anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like the name Redshift too, adding that little bit of astrophysics in there. So. Well, so is this what you're working on? Is it computer graphics, or are you still working with your hand? Yeah.
It's 3D CGI, but toon shaded. So it kind of, I'm giving it sort of a pseudo anime look with the shape of the characters' faces, but that's it. Like everything else is just, pure like Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and a healthy helping dose of bionic dance style as well. So, I'm hoping people actually understand what I'm doing when they watch it. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching it going, what the hell is this crap? But I'm trying to start it out in ways that will prepare people for what it really is. The Bionic Dance animation logo that it starts with looks like the old RKO tower with like the Morse code coming off it.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will let people know, okay, this is going to be sort of old school style. But every time people do that in the modern age, it's inevitably done as comedy, like Futurama or making fun of the Jetsons or something. And I really wanted to see someone take that old school, Googie and what's the other one I'm thinking of here, Art Deco look. With like rings around everything and Van de Graaff generators everywhere and people wearing Saturn and atoms on their shirts, all that stuff. I'd like to see someone take that seriously. But since nobody will, it's apparently up to me. So
it's for the Jetsons, esque part comes in. That's what
the aesthetic
comes to mind. Yeah, the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'm very excited for it. So
thank you. Might take me a year to finish it, but it is going so well. And unlike some of my previous projects, I'm doing very regular backups. So
good. That is a key. Absolutely. So many people have lost stuff, like just getting their YouTube channels like erased, and they have none of it backed up at all. So I get that totally. So okay, so our topic tonight is fallacies specifically related to atheism, and we would start with atheism being a religion.
Yeah, I've covered that before on my channel, and I think, well, the attitude I've adopted whenever someone tries to bring that up is basically it can be summed up in 2 words. So what? Okay, because let's suppose atheism is a religion. Okay, but we still don't believe in any gods. So what has that changed? I mean, atheism is not a religion, but if we still don't think there's any gods and that's our religion, we're still atheists. We're just not like believers in any gods. Our atheism is a religion of, I don't buy your bullshit still. So, I mean, really, it's a non-starter, that argument. They obviously think it's like, shut up, you're hypocrites because you're religious too. But I don't think atheism, or at least outspoken atheism, is about being against religion or not believing in a religion. It's not believing in a deity. Yeah. Right. So, fine, say I'm in a religion, you're an idiot, but say it and let's move on and start talking about whether or not a God exists.
I think part of the problem is that they see us as a collective, even though we're really not. I mean, we have our community here online. A lot of us have similar ideals and beliefs, not beliefs, but, we agree about a lot of things. But in terms of atheism as a whole, it really is just not believing in a deity. But they see us as this collective, and it has to do with God in a sense, because our belief is it's not about God. And that might be why they want to call us a religion.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I've had people bring that up to me before. And what I've said to them basically is, look, we only banded together for strength in numbers because we have to defend ourselves against your shenanigans. If you guys could share and play nicely with the other kids, we'd still just be like these disparate, not even groups, just probably just individuals, because we can ignore you now. You know, you're not interfering in our lives. If they could keep their religion in their pants, we would not be atheism the way they see it.
It's something you've said a lot, which I completely agree with, is that it would be really nice if we didn't have to make these videos anymore, if we didn't have to talk about this stuff. You want to expand upon that?
Well, when I first started my channel, it was intended to show off my animation work. I mean, the name BionicDance is a reference to the cartoon show Bionic 6. Whenever they do their power-up move, they couldn't just go, oh yeah, Bionic's on. They had to do this whooshing, swirling, martial arts looking dance thing. And then they shouted Bionics, oh, you know, like that. And I'm like, they're doing the Bionic dance. And after a while, I was like, if I'm going to make a production company someday, I'll call it BionicDance. And then when I started doing videos about animation, sometimes I wish I'd made a different channel with a more atheism-centric name, because now the name BionicDance is just inextricably associated with atheism. But I would absolutely love it if I could stop arguing about religion and bring my channel back to animation only, because that really is my true passion. That's why I wanted to get into videos in the first place. And the truth is, I've been doing these atheism videos for about 13 years now, and I'm tired. I'm really, really tired of refuting the same arguments over and over, because theists haven't come up with a new one in I don't even know how long. And so the only reason I really keep making videos, because I know a lot of people back in the early days of YouTube atheism did it as a kind of catharsis after they left their religion. And like I seem to remember Mr. Repsion saying something like that to me when I was going, how come you don't make videos about atheism anymore? And he was like, I was done. I said everything I need to say. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that was your personal journey. For me, I'm trying to defend those who can't defend themselves, to give them a bridge out of their religion if they need it, to show people what religion does to the world that it probably shouldn't be doing. And so I've described my channel as activism more than anything else. And that's why I make these videos. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it's time to pass the torch or something, because like I said, I'm tired. If YouTube wasn't my only source of income, I'd probably go animation only right now. You know, if we get that UBI that we keep hearing about, you know, because honestly, I can live on that UBI. I don't pay rent on this thing, so I don't need a lot of money. You know, so if we started getting UBI and universal health care and all of that stuff, I could retire from YouTube and just be an animator like I always wanted.
Yeah, it would be
So
nice
I don't
to
know.
work on those things. But you think it's possible if you just slowly started to, you know, mix in a little bit more of your animation but keep some of the atheism, and just, do you think you'd be able to bring your audience over to that?
I don't know. And like I said, well, okay, here's the thing. I do not have that monthly style of Patreon thing going on where people just pay a flat fee each month. It's per video, because that's the way Patreon used to be. And you can set a limit on how much you want to give a month. So if I make 1,000 videos in a month, you don't go bankrupt, right? So that works out. But the thing is, I am very conscious of the fact that these people are donating their money to me. I mean, they don't owe me a damn thing. This is pure generosity. And if I start betraying them, if they even see it that way, I don't know, by making videos with content that isn't what they wanted to pay for, I mean, I feel like an asshole if I do that, right? So that's another reason why I haven't been slowly like taking my channel into the realm of animation only, is because, you know, I feel like I owe those people like their money's worth, you know? So that's part of why I would wait for something like UBI to be able to like I said, retire from YouTube atheism. But at the same time, like, there may be a bigger audience for animation out there. And I do have another project that's not Quinn Redshift. It's called Head Meets. That's basically just little short quips. If anyone remembers my old Weird Thoughts videos, it's kind of like that, but with an animated character. I was originally going to do it as a webcomic, and I got to about 39 of them and then just sort of ran dry on ideas. And it was more comic strip format than narrative fiction. But I think I could probably turn those into little short videos, kind of similar to what they do with Cyanide and Happiness, with the animated stuff they do on their YouTube channel, only 3D instead of, it looks like they use Flash or something. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'm really conscious of how well I treat those who are willing to donate to my channel, and I don't want to hurt them, you know?
Yeah. No, that's totally understandable. I have a quick question from the chat. My friend Dave wants you to explain the tattoo on your arm, on your forearm.
Oh, this one? It's just circuitry. I thought it would be cool. I'd been wanting a half sleeve of circuitry for a really long time. And I mean, obviously, like, I'm a big honkin' fan of Tron, but I'm also a fan of the 80s movie Explorers, if you know that one, where these kids have dreams of circuit boards. They build the circuit boards, and it turns out to be a way of building their own spaceship to go visit the aliens that sent them the dreams. It's an amazing movie. I absolutely love the crap out of it. So there were a lot of circuit boards in my childhood, and I figured, how cool would this be, you know? So I designed it. I brought it to the tattoo artist, and they told me how doable it was. And like, we worked on editing it, and then $500 later, there you go.
I was going to ask if you designed it, but yes, you answered that. That's very cool. I have nerdy tattoos, and I understand that completely. I have Boltzmann's equation for entropy on my arm because nerdy. Yeah.
Oh, and if anybody is curious, no, this is not a circuit board of anything. If you built this, it probably wouldn't do squat. Just saying. Yeah. It's 100% stylized. It's little dots and dashes, and that's it.
Very cool. Thank you. If anybody else has a question, just tag me or MathPig. MathPig probably better because he's paying more attention to the chat than me. I think one of the things that really pisses me off about them saying that atheism is a religion is that it's almost as if they're putting down religion, like, really, you know, telling us if we're a religion, then it's saying religion is stupid. But that in and of itself is hypocritical. That's kind of how I see it.
I always got the impression that they were just trying for a shut up, a mic drop, like silver bullet argument of, well, you're a religion too, so you don't get to criticize religions. It's like, not even necessarily religion is stupid. It's more just a tu quo que fallacy, basically, is what it is.
Yeah, and I guess that is true, but it just seems like we're more, you know, criticizing their belief in God than we are criticizing them just being a religion, which they don't seem to notice as much. It's just a back and forth of you're the same as us kind of deal.
Well, and I mean, I don't even really care that much if people want to be religious. I don't care if someone believes in God. I just want you to not mistreat other people as a result, you know, and that is an attitude that I think a lot of people in the atheism community don't necessarily share. I think there's a lot of people who are very invested in getting people to not believe in a God. Personally, I think that the best way to stop religion's abuses is to stop religion at the core, is to get the audience to stop believing. You know, to get people out of religion is probably the best way to make religion mind its own business. But I'm not invested in religion itself going away. I'm just invested in, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of flabbiness. I'm just
not
saying,
only that, like, the bad stuff that religion does, but also maybe stop religious people from trying to force their religion on everybody else, which I don't understand why they feel that necessary.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is now I was never religious. The closest I came to being religious was trying really hard to use the force. It only works on supermarket doors. And so I may be talking completely out of my ass here, but it does seem like they have a commandment by their deity to spread the religion, at least if it's an Abrahamic religion. I mean, you can look to the East and most of them keep to themselves. I've had a lot of people actually ask me, like, why don't you go after, say, Shintos and Buddhists? I'm like, because they're not making nuisances of themselves. In fact, that's one of the reasons I tend to not go after Jews either, is because most of the Jewish people, at least in the West, at least here in the US, are pretty nice about their religion. They don't really care that much. They're not getting in your face with it like you get with Christians and Muslims. And I've also had a couple of Christians say, how come you never go after Muslims? I do, but it's not as frequent, but I do. So it's not like I'm singling out Christianity in all of its variants. It's just who is making the biggest noise at the moment in the direction of people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, and especially here. And in fact, back to the Jewish thing, most American Jews don't actually believe in a deity. They just consider themselves Jews because of their heritage. I think it's something close to 50% as well.
Well, and my mom's side of the family is Jewish, but culturally Jewish. So they're not so much Jews as Jewish. And I mean, I've been to a bat mitzvah. I spun a dreidel and opened presents and lit a menorah, but there was never anything to it. It's like the same way, people celebrate Christmas, but let's face it, they're really celebrating Giftmas. They're buying presents and getting presents and drinking eggnog and candy canes and all that stuff. There's like no religion in it for a lot of people. And there certainly never was for me. And it was the same thing with Hanukkah, is like, ooh, 7 days of presents, rock, that was it. So
yeah. But my son and I still celebrate Christmas, and we're both atheists. So, something you grew up with or something that's in your culture, you still want it to be a part of your life. But honestly, even most of the Christians out there, how much of Christmas is really about the birth of Christ, So.
And have you ever noticed that the more secular a Christmas carol is, the more likely it is to be upbeat in a major key, all of that stuff. It's weird. It's like the more religious a Christmas carol, the more grim it sounds. Like if you didn't know it had something to do with Christmas, listen to Carol of the Bells sometimes. It sounds like someone's about to be sacrificed, like to some evil god. It's like I'm sure Tim Burton has used it in one of his movies to be extremely creepy. I don't watch his movies, but it seems like the kind of thing that he would use from the ones I did watch before I said, fuck this guy. But, it has that sound to it of being extraordinarily, I don't know, there's just something off about it. But when you get into like Frosty and Rudolph, all of a sudden it's like really upbeat stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's the case, but it does seem to be.
We sang Carol of the Bells for 4 years straight when I was in high school. It's not just a creepy sounding song. If you listen to the words, it's not the happiest Christmas song in the world either. So that and Hallelujah chorus, which is a lot. Even though it almost has an upbeat sound to it because of all the high soprano notes and everything, but it's very dark. So I totally get that.
Yeah, I don't know. Just no. I mean, let's face it. My favorite Christmas song of all time has to be "It's Christmas at Ground Zero" by Weird Al. So what you gonna do?
Yeah. But there's, a war on Christmas. We're trying to, get rid of. I don't understand. I swear to God, the only war on Christmas is the war they're waging against this war on Christmas. Like, it's fucking nuts. I've never heard any atheist ever say that, you can't say Merry Christmas or anything like that. It's fucking nuts.
And when you really think about it, and for some reason, I've never had one of them address the point that if you say Happy Holidays, you're including Christmas. You know,
Yeah.
there's like so many winter holidays around about there. I mean, you've got Christmas, Hanukkah, I think Kwanzaa's then, right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
New Year's and probably tons of other crap that I don't remember. But I mean, if you say happy holidays, you know what you're doing. You're being egalitarian. You're being kind to everybody. You're saying all holidays matter is what you're saying. So, I mean, you know, if you get huffy because people aren't singling out your particular religious holiday, fuck you.
Yeah. I think a big part of it too is that Christians feel their power kind of slipping in this country, even though they're clearly still on top and they clearly still have all the fucking power, but they feel that, you know, it's inching away from them bit by bit. So they have to constantly be the victim somehow. You know, and it's not just with that, it's everything. It's and, you know, having anybody in a political office that is not, you know, is super Christian, that, you know, them saying that Obama, who was absolutely a Christian but trying to say he was a Muslim, and I don't know, it just seems to me that they are really trying for this victim mentality, and I feel like that is about them trying to hold on to that power. How do you see it?
I mean, yes, that, but also what do you expect out of people whose religion is based around a martyr? Right? They always
Yeah.
think that they are the underdog. They always think that they're oppressed. I mean, how many times do they say that? Oh, there's an assault on religion. Oh my gosh, you're not forcing kids to play like to pray like Christians in school. Oh my gosh, it's an assault on Christianity. It's like, no, not at all. But okay, one thing that we've probably all noticed is that Christians have a tendency to be kind of on the right wing. And there's a lot of history behind that, like, for example, the Cold War and, you know, fighting those godless commies and all this stuff. And I realize I'm giving the Cliff's Notes version of this, so no one jump down my throat for not being completely detailed. I'm sure someone will, because that's the internet. But you know, like, I'm a big old advocate of a YouTube series called The Alt-Right Playbook. If any of you have watched that, good. If you haven't, go look it up. It is worth watching. It's really long. It's a big series of videos, but they're very engaging. And by the end of it, you will feel like you've been punched in the gut because you don't quite, it's an emotional roller coaster watching this thing because it describes the right-wing mindset. And as I say, like, religion, Christianity is very firmly enmeshed in the right wing right now. And part of what they describe is that part of the mindset is hierarchies. They love hierarchies. They love having that sort of like pyramid of power with people who deserve it, who like are destined to be on the top. And then there's all these layers, and the whole idea is to serve the layer above you as much as you possibly can because you don't want to drop another level down on that hierarchical pyramid. The whole thing is about keeping people in their place and all of that. And boy, is that ever built into religion. And not just Christianity. I mean, you look at the whole thing in India with the untouchables and all of that stuff, the caste system. And I think that this has affected like American Christian thought for a very long time, is that they see themselves as people who deserve to be where they are. And they see the people that they value as deserving to be where they are and all of that. So, they probably look at secular people or people from other religions trying to no longer be in their correct place in that hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fuels what ultimately ends up being a very fascist attitude. Because fascists need a nebulous other for everyone to be afraid of, to hold on to that power. And when they run out of an other, they move on to another one until there's no others left and they're fighting each other. I mean, look at how it was where they're like, oh my gosh, all them queers, they're scary. And then when gay marriage happened and they're like, well, I guess we can't fight this one anymore. Okay, now on to all the trans people. And when they stop, like when there's like trans rights firmly enmeshed as much as we possibly can. I don't know who the next victim will be, but there will be another victim because they have to have one. It's just part of their mindset. They love their bullies.
Yeah, that was something we were actually discussing on MathPig's channel earlier today, is how all of a sudden the trans community is being, attacked, especially by the higher up. I mean, look at what our president is doing to them. But whereas 5 years ago or so, it was more the gay community. And it really does seem that once, us and the LGBT were really able to put down our roots, and the gay community got the right to be able to get married, they were like, well, what the fuck do we do now? And then I totally agree that that's probably why they moved on to trans, because it's not like being trans is a new thing. In fact, it's been around for thousands of years. People have been trans for a long time. People are more aware of it now, but it's not a new thing. It's not a fad or whatever they're trying to sell it as. So
yeah.
I have to agree.
Unfortunately, this is not an exact science, because for a while it seemed like their enemy was definitely Black people. And when that started to fail, that's when they moved on to the gays. But obviously, looking around us now, race is still it's still a victim, like sort of position. If your skin is too dark, you're still a victim. It's just it wasn't as overt for a while until Trump got in office, and all of a sudden the KKK and all the other bigots, racists, felt like they didn't have to hide anymore, which in a weird way could ultimately end up being a good thing, because now we know who you are, where before they used to have to hide.
From the beginning that Trump made it okay to hate. He made it acceptable to be publicly a racist again. And well, yes, it's good that we're fighting back, and maybe we're finally going to be heard about this stuff. At the same time, I think KKK membership has doubled since Trump has been in office, which is a totally fucked up, who even thought 5-10 years ago that about the KKK at all, that they really still existed, but now they're just out in public and without even their hoods, and they're totally proud and okay with their position.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. It's like the fact that religion is mixed in with the KKK inextricably is kind of telling as well. I mean, like that was never a secret. That was never really hidden, but it's so much more in our faces now than it ever was in my lifetime. I mean, the KKK was much bigger long before I was born, but now it's just so in our faces, and it's so surreal. Actually, this is not the world I thought we would have in 2020. In 2020, I thought we'd be living, like, to bring us full circle, the Jetsons. So, I mean, this is not the future I was promised. No. It looks like we're probably going to end up more Mad Max than Federation. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, their doctrine is predominantly Christian. They tend to meet in churches. They're just, I don't know why other Christians don't see this and wonder, why does this keep happening? Why do hate groups keep glomming on to our ideals? Well, maybe something is wrong. Something's broken in there.
Well, I was just watching a documentary on Netflix the other day called 13th that goes through the history of post-slavery racism towards Black people. And wow, much like the alt-right playbook, this was a gut punch, because a lot of it was what I already knew, and a lot of it was stuff I didn't. But even the stuff that I already knew was described in much more minute detail, and it's absolutely terrifying. I mean, I was raised in a state that is even now still 92% white. This would be Vermont, right? But as a weird result, most people aren't racist just because they weren't confronted by people of other races very much. When they were, it was kind of an anomaly or a novelty. So nobody felt threatened, and so I think probably in Vermont, people of color have a much easier time than they would in, say, Texas or California or Georgia or Alabama or any of those places. you know, but I didn't realize how like insidious it was what politicians were doing to Black people. Like the whole drug war, I already knew that the drug war was a racist thing, but some of what they did, the details, I mean, you just have to watch this documentary. I can't do all of it myself, and let's face it, we're way the hell off topic, but even so, I highly recommend it. It teaches you a lot, but religion is linked to a lot of the racism we see. It's weird, but it is.
You bring that up about being raised in Vermont. I was actually just thinking this earlier because I was raised in Connecticut, and in our town we had 2 Black kids in my high school. That's it. It's a tiny little farm town in Connecticut. We weren't a lot of people anyway. And I remember being at her, because we were really good friends, played soccer together and all this stuff, being at her house one day and her bringing up the as a Black girl, and then she finished whatever she said after that. And it never occurred to me. Like, I mean, I knew she was Black, but I never really thought that this was an issue she would ever have. Like, it just was never a topic we talked about. Nobody ever, it's the same thing. It's not, you grow up in a place that is a little bit more liberal or even just less, inclusive, and you don't see it as much. Whereas we came down here, my son and I, to Georgia 3 years ago, and there's just fucking Confederate flags everywhere, and people are outwardly racist. We have this thing called Stone Mountain, which is the Mount Rushmore of Confederate soldiers, like 40 minutes up the road from me. It's fucking gross. And you just don't, I don't understand. And you're right. We never thought that in 2020 we would be sitting here and having to have the discussion of stop, being racist. What the fuck?
I will say one thing though. I have both a blind spot and a moment of like just sort of like self-doubt and all of this stuff where, like, I like to make fiction. I like to make my animations, and this blind spot comes up where I just sort of forget to put in people of color because I was raised in a place where you saw so few. And then when I realize, oh shit, what have I done? Someone somewhere is going to go, hey, Kate, this is pretty, pasty white here. What are you doing? And then I go, well, but then now, once I realized it, if I put darker skinned people in, I'm just engaging in tokenism. I'm doing it because I feel I have to check a box, and it's not genuine. And then I go, yes, but then if I ignore it and I end up in this feedback loop in my head of what do I do? How do I do this and both be fair and honest and true to myself and all of that stuff? How do I do that? It's frustrating. It's really frustrating at times. And I realize that's 100% my problem. But even so, I mean, it's something I think about maybe even a little too much. I don't know. I
totally understand that you don't want to engage in tokenism at the same time. It's like we were having a discussion the other day on a different channel where we were talking about some of the riots and police brutality and things. And but we were all white and we felt really bad about it. But there were people in chat that weren't, and we're like, yeah, come in if you want to talk about it. But then they got mad because this one girl specifically got mad because she's like, I don't want to be your token. But it's such a hard line to which side do you go on? Like, how, as a white girl, how do I approach this? I've always been an ally. I've always tried to stand up for what's right, but at the same time, I don't have the same voice or experience as other people do. So how do you speak to it?
Yeah. One thing I find interesting, I mean, I've been living in San Diego for about 3.5, almost 4 years now. And because we're like really, really close, like screaming distance of the Mexican border, there's a lot of Hispanics here. And I knew that when I moved, and I expected to see like a lot of that anti-Mexican sentiment, a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment, and I haven't. And I'm absolutely shocked by that. I'm glad, but I'm shocked because I expected it, and everyone's pretty egalitarian here. And I'm like, that's awesome, Yeah.
I lived in Tucson. We were half an hour away from the Mexican border. no issues like I do. You know, people here so much farther in Georgia, so much farther away from the border, and with the rhetoric that has spewed out of Trump's mouth too recently, it is so much worse. I don't get it. There's probably a bigger Mexican population in southern Tucson than there is white. My son had way more, you know, Hispanic friends than he did white friends, you know, when we lived there, and it was just not a thought. People didn't scream about, you know, them taking their jobs or anything like that. It just wasn't like that. Here, it's totally different though, and I don't understand that at all. And I don't know if I can attribute it more to what Trump has done, if he's made things worse. But it, you know, where they say it's an issue, it really isn't. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what else to say on the race issue. There's, you know, I feel powerless to do much of anything to help. And I kind of, in a way, wish I was still in Seattle so I could go visit Chaz. You've heard of Chaz, right? The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone.
Yeah.
I mean, because I have friends who are up there right now. They're taking video and pictures, and like before Chaz was set up, they were talking about how there was like pepper spray and tear gas coming in through their windows, even when they're closed, and all this stuff. And it's like, wow, I move away, and then like this big, huge historical moment is happening. Like I used to live literally 2 blocks from Chaz. For 5 years, I lived there, and I would have been able to see it from my windows if I was still there. And I wish I could be part of it, but at the same time, I wish I could be part of it when there isn't a pandemic.
Yeah.
So.
That's it too.
Oh, well.
How have you been dealing with the whole pandemic? You know, staying indoors and.
I mean, okay, I don't go out a lot anymore. I miss my board game nights, and I wish I could go rollerblading and all of that stuff. But at the same time, I mean, you know, I mask up and I actually put on rubber gloves because I'm going to be touching, like, you know, screens at the self-checkout or going to the ATM or whatever, because that's the only time I go out right now, is to go to the supermarket or the bank. And I have to say, I'm a little floored by the people who are walking around where, yeah, they've got a mask on slung under their nose, so their nose is exposed. I'm like, what's the point? Why are you wearing a mask in the first place? You know, that's just not okay. You shouldn't be doing that. But you know, maybe it's too much protection to wear rubber gloves when I go out. I don't know. But I don't want to die. I like being alive. It may be my favorite thing. So if I take a little extra precaution, gee, sue me, right? But there are other people who've gone the other way. Now, I live in a complex that has a small courtyard, and people have been holding barbecues, like 12, 13 people at this barbecue, not a mask in sight. And I'm like, you guys are just committing suicide by virus. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't know.
My town, really, like, the only big difference was, like, you couldn't go into fast food restaurants anymore. They made you go through the drive-through. But, you know, Georgia, he was the first one to open the state and completely open it. And it was like bowling alleys and massage parlors and all that stuff. He was like, yeah, let's do everything. But he also, I think in beginning of May was when it was either the end of April or the beginning of May, well before anything opened, he fucking opened the beaches, my governor. So, you know, my town did not give a fuck. I go out there and there are a few of us that wear masks, but there's the same amount of cars on the road, you know, it didn't really faze anybody, which is weird because a lot of people got sick here. In fact, before the schools closed, we had teachers that were sick. You know, our hospital has been overrun for months now. I live, you know, I said outside Atlanta, which is, I think part of the issue is because Hartsfield-Jackson, the airport in Atlanta, is the busiest in the world. Hence why Georgia was one of the first states to get hit. So, you know, I don't understand why people can't just get over it and have precautions and care about what's going on.
Well, you know, the way I figure it, if there's all these people who are, let's face it, overwhelmingly right-wingers going out and treating COVID-19 as if it doesn't matter, when they all die off from the plague here, from the virus, that will just help facilitate my eventual rise to power. So, it's all to the good, I say.
Yes. Yeah. It makes me think of, I saw this video the other day of a group of protesters that were pushed up against a line of cops, and they were screaming in their face and they were pushing at them and stuff, and the cops weren't doing anything at all. But then at the end of the video, it was like, well, this was from a month ago when they were protesting, having to wear masks and stuff like that. It wasn't what's happening now. So the dichotomy of it is just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I do kind of hate that 2020 has been stolen from us. All of us cooped up still, cabin fever and everything. But I'm sure eventually it'll be over.
Yeah, it would be over quicker if people would stay indoors more. Like my best friend lives in Australia, and they made it so you would get $1,000 fine if you went out and didn't have a reason for it. So people stayed the fucking doors. And guess what? They're pretty much open now. Her kids are back in school. They haven't had a new case in a long time. If we had a president that had actually admitted that it was an issue at first, instead of calling it a hoax for 2 months and done something about it, then we wouldn't have 115,000 people dead or something like that. Now it's unfortunate, but if we take the time to fight against it and be inside, then that's less time it'll take for us to get over it. But the longer we push up against it, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah, and I mean, that is one of the big faults of Trump, is that nothing is ever his fault, and nothing that goes wrong during his administration actually happened, because he is Captain Awesome. That's the best. Like, I think that if he really wanted to stroke his ego the way he seems to, instead of ignoring the virus, what he should have done was step up like a boss and beat it. That would have been like a game changer for him. People would have gone, oh my gosh, he actually stepped up and did what he needed to do. But instead, he sat back and went, nope, not happening. This won't happen on my watch. Obviously not. And it did not go well for all of us. No. And by extension, it didn't go well for his rep the way he hoped it would. It's insane. I don't know. It's just.
I actually had this argument with because my parents are Trump-loving right-wingers, and I said, well, it's gotten bad because of him, because he, didn't say at the beginning. He said for 2 months it was a hoax. She said to me, oh, well, they didn't tell him how bad it was. And specifically, she said it was the Democrats tried to tell him that it wasn't that bad.
But he just refuses to read his briefings. They've said this, that he will sit there and not read the briefings at all. So they tried to tell him. There's no doubt about that.
And even so, within 2 months, he had to have seen what was going on in the rest of the world and knew it was bad. But he just continued. He didn't want to say he was wrong. He just continued with the whole it's a hoax thing. And I think part of it might have been because he knew that it would be closing down businesses and stuff like this, and it would fuck up the economy, which has fucked up his bottom line. And that's what makes him mad the most. It's about his money. It's the only reason he has this job at all. It's all about the fucking money.
Well, and then you've got, like, to bring us full circle, you've got all those people out there who going, we don't need masks. We're protected by the blood of Jesus, and it's like, wow, okay, sure. Like, there's that footage of that one woman, she's being interviewed in her car, and she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm washed in the blood of Jesus, like that, and then drives away. And it's just like, I wonder if she's still alive.
No. They had one pastor in Florida that was very adamant about keeping his church open and stuff like that, and he's fucking dead. Not surprising. So, and there's a few of them like that. I think there's like half a dozen at least pastors that came out and were very public at the beginning about keeping their churches open, and all of them are dead. So, but that's part of the problem with. That's part of the things that hurt with religion, is that they fall onto these ideals and these fantasies, these fairy tales that, you know, don't end up helping them in the long run.
Yeah, and they use faith. I mean, that is one of the things that I argue about most on my channel is faith. This belief in things that you can't prove, you have no evidence. Sometimes you believe it in the face of contradictory evidence because you have faith. And faith, when it comes to faith and the virus wins every time, guaranteed. So, I mean, that is one of the big problems of religion. I mean, I know I was saying before that I'm willing to let religious people just live and let live if they'll give me the same courtesy. But at the same time, when I really think about it, I'm like, but I could be helping to literally save their lives if I get them to realize that they're believing in bull crap. But I've also just said that, you know, if people are willing to commit suicide by virus, I guess let them, as long as it doesn't affect me. I mean, it's a very fine line to walk between trying to save people from themselves and giving them the freedom to make their own mistakes.
As for the adults that want to do this, fine, but they end up killing their kids, and that's what really drives me nuts. Especially like Jehovah's Witnesses who won't do blood transfusions and refuse to, things like that, where they will fall on their faith as opposed to the science that they know will help because that's what they believe. Fine, like you said, if you want to suicide, you know, if you want to commit suicide by faith, that's on you. But your kids don't have a choice in that. And that's what fucking kills me is seeing children that, you know, suffer because of their parents' beliefs.
It's true. I mean, I was talking about the picnics they're having outside there. There's a couple that has a very adorable 11-month-old who are attending these things. They're literally my downstairs neighbors. And I'm just like, really? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
No, but there's only so, and I see the opposite too, is I know that when people push their religion on us, they give us the whole, you know, I'm just trying to save you from hell stuff. But, you know, that's not proven, and it just doesn't exist anyway, where we know, you know, you're putting your children at risk, and we see this, you're putting yourselves at risk. But, and that's, you're also putting other people at risk as well, people like anti-vaxxers, you know. You can believe what you want to believe, but when you're not vaccinating your children, there are children out there that can't be vaccinated that get put at risk because of it. It's follow the fucking science. Why is that so difficult for people?
Well, I mean, we could do video after video after video trying to talk about that one, trying to puzzle that one out. I mean, because I've dealt with it on my channel, but the best I can do are assumptions based on what I see. I mean, like whenever someone tries to argue with me and they try to tell me what I think, oh, this is your position, I have to say to them, you know, which one of us knows what's in my head better? And so if I'm going to be fair, I can't say what religious people are thinking. I can only say what it looks like they're thinking based on what they're doing and saying, right? And I get the impression that when they reject science over faith, I think down at the root of it, it's fear. You know, a lot of it is when I die, I don't want me to end. But if I don't have the faith I need to have, if I don't trust in God, I don't get into whatever afterlife is, you know, the good place there. So, you know, it's the whole Pascal's wager thing. Like they need that safety blanket, that security blanket. And that's what it sure looks like. And after, you know, more than a decade of arguing about this stuff, I've seen nothing to shake me from that conclusion. But it like, you know, again, I don't know their minds better than they do, but I do think a lot of it stems from fear.
And I mean, I understand that. I do. But when you, there's fear and there's the fear of death. But I think, you know, it's just, sorry, it's hard because I as a scientist, I tend to just look towards facts. That's all I want is just facts, and I see what I believe with the facts, and having to base everything on your life on something that you have literally no facts for, and it's so hard. Sorry.
You know that one dude who said, like, he said it on camera, if I read in the Bible that 2 + 2 = 5, I would believe it and incorporate it into my thinking and see how to make it work in the real world. But what the Bible says goes is basically what he said.
Yeah.
And that's crazy pants. But I still think, again, that a lot of it just comes down to, you know, if you're not loyal to God, if you don't have all the faith and this, that, and the other thing, then you're going to hell. And I'm scared of hell and I'm scared to die. And so I won't, you know, participate in science because it contradicts the thing I need to do to survive death in a good way. And I mean, I'm not a scientist. I let other people, like, my videos generally don't deal with things like evolution and flat earth and plate tectonics and fossils and stuff. There's other, like, perfectly good YouTubers out there who are covering that stuff better than I ever could. I try to deal more with, like, the logical arguments and the philosophy and stuff like that. But I have enough of a rudimentary understanding of a lot of the scientific stuff. Number one, to be able to talk on the topic at a layman's level above whatever theists would ever like talk about. But I also know enough to know that I don't know enough to know what I don't know. You know, the whole Dunning-Kruger thing is like, I know that there are so many things where they're just outside my pay grade. And that's why I let other people, like, say, Vice Rhino or Professor Stick, handle that stuff.
Yeah. The reason I get so flustered about it, though, is because people, you know, science deniers end up fucking with what I do with my job. You know, I end up with this wall, and I find a lot of the science deniers, you know, people who don't believe in evolution, they also don't believe in climate change. So I shouldn't, at this point in time, having this discussion with people that climate change is real and it is man-made. I have the facts, I have the data, I know it, I studied it, but I constantly stuck up against these people and having to argue it, and it's not fair. Like, and that's why it just, the whole science denial thing really upsets me, because the shit actually matters, and it matters to the world, it matters to the people that live here, it matters to everybody. And when you spend your life just stuck in this faith and fighting against reality and fighting against science, you end up keeping us from progressing forward. You know, we as Americans should be in the forefront of alternative energy, but we have a fucking president who denies that climate change is even a thing, says it's a Chinese hoax.
And I mean, like, the right wing is not just the religion party, but also the business party, right? So those two are sort of inextricably linked. And like, the same people who are denying climate change right now were the same ones who denied that lung cancer was a thing and cigarettes caused them, you know, or caused it rather, all because of money. And now people are denying climate change because of religion, but also because of oil money. You know, now, if I had owned an oil company and I discovered, oh my gosh, we're harming the environment, my first thought would have been, how can we transition over to green energy and still turn a profit? You know, but these people seem to be more like sticks in the mud, where they go, no, we got things the way we like them and we love our money. But the thing is, I mean, if we destroy the planet, what good is your money? But they don't seem to be able to have that thinking. And maybe if the right wing wasn't also the business party, like if religion and business weren't so tied together, at least along political lines, maybe we'd be in a different place right now. I don't know.
Yeah, because I see politicians that I know that a lot of them aren't that stupid that they really don't believe in climate change, but it's clear, I mean, the biggest lobbyist groups in America are fucking big oil. But the problem is, when you have people like Trump and McConnell saying that, you know, climate change isn't a thing, you have everybody else in the country that, you know, aren't as well educated believing this shit. So it holds us back, and it's just so frustrating. That's why I get frustrated about the whole whole anti-science thing.
Yeah. I don't understand it. I really don't. It, like, I mean, okay, no, I take that back. I sort of understand it, but I can't empathize with it.
Mm-mm.
You know, like I cannot put myself in the head of someone who genuinely thinks all that stuff. I can intellectually maybe understand their reasons, but I can't feel it viscerally.
Yeah, you should be able to stand for something, and it shouldn't have to be money. That shouldn't be the
Yeah.
number one thing.
Cool. I mean, I've mentioned this before in other places. I don't want money as an end unto itself. I don't want to collect money. I don't see money as a way of keeping score. I see money as a means to an end. I have things I'd love to accomplish that take a lot of money, but I want to accomplish them because they're like art or just having my own car or something, building my dream house, things like that. But I don't like, I look at these people who are sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars and I'm like, why?
Yeah, and they hold on to it.
What's the purpose of having that much money? You're never going to spend it. Your kids, your great grandkids will never spend it. What's the point? I mean, after a while, it just becomes a way to keep score, like I said.
Yeah, it really does.
So, I mean, I don't understand that mindset any better than I understand religion, climate denial, any of this. I don't get it. I can't.
At least some of us are, fighting against it. At least we have a little bit more of a voice now, and hopefully things will change as long as we keep, working together and having that voice, because that's really what the fuck else can we do at the time being,
Well, I mean, okay, I'll say this much. Being raised by hippies wasn't so bad, except for the music and the food. But at the same time, conflict resolution, what was drilled into me was no violence, talk it out, use your words, all of that stuff. But I sometimes wonder if that can possibly work against people who have, let's face it, a bit of a gun fetish and who are willing to like smash heads in the streets with people they don't agree with, who are being peaceful and just speaking their minds. After a while, I start to wonder what else, what options do you have when you don't believe in violence and the other side does?
Yeah. It's hard to come to terms with that. And that's why so many people get angry about the looting and the riots, which honestly isn't totally tied into what's a lot of people that are doing this are just taking advantage of the situation. But the fact of the matter is that it is making some noise and it's making some headway. So there's only so much talking and that you can really do before eventually someone's going to stop and listen. And that's a really sad fact, but it is fact.
So, okay, in some of my darker moments, I suspect that this country might be headed towards breaking up and then civil war. Because there's been for a while now the Cal Exit movement, the California secession movement, and now it like Oregon and Washington State are all saying, let's just form the nation of Cascadia or secede and join Canada. But of course, there's no provisions for secession in the Constitution. So if we tried it, there's a very good chance that the government will object. And there will be no way to take a vote or anything to let us go. And of course, San Diego has a naval base. And how do we handle that? And for all we know, like, I don't know where there's missile silos, but I'm sure that there's like ICBM silos, like around some of these places that want out, but I think with the chaos that we're seeing right now, and if Trump wins a second term, I think people are finally going to have enough. And I don't know what we're headed towards. And it's both scary and potentially inspiring. I just don't know. But I would cheerfully live in Cascadia or the nation of California or whatever, cheerfully, even if it's just Western California, because I know that there's parts of like Eastern California and Eastern Washington that are fairly red, actually, but Jesus land can have them, I don't care. It's just, and there's times I've thought of emigrating as well. There are some people who've told me, hey, if you want to come to Australia or New Zealand, we'll have you,
feel that as well. So
I might feel the need for an escape route. I don't know.
I've
But
never, I've never honestly been like super proud of being American, but I have to say, as of late, I am ashamed of where
yes,
we've gone in our country. I really am.
I actually made a meme a little while ago. It didn't go viral. None of my memes ever do. But you know that guy who was protesting the police, big old beard, screaming at him. You get a profile shot of him, and it was all the people who wanted a haircut and to go bowling. That guy.
Yeah,
And I said, dear rest of the world, this is not America. We're ashamed of this guy too.
yeah. So
Because you get those memes of people going, how Americans see themselves, and it's all like, DC superhero striking poses. And I'm like, you realize that's how the right wing sees
yeah,
themselves. Don't lump me in with those chuckleheads, is basically my attitude on this one. Because that's not all Americans. I don't want to be thought of that way. I'm spiritually taping a flag of Canada on my backpack.
yeah,
If I like now, granted, people in Europe apparently see through that now and know you're an American if you have the flag of Canada on your backpack. But that's why I say metaphorically, spiritually, I've got a flag of Canada on my backpack because
yeah.
seriously, rest of the world, I'm not one of those people, and don't for a moment think I am.
Yeah, and
So,
I think there's a disproportionate amount of people like that just have louder voices. Just like I know a lot of people that when they think American, they think of a Southern drawl,
mm,
but there's not, it's a small amount of our country that speaks that way, but for some reason that's what they see. And the right wing at least at the moment tends to have a louder voice. And if not, they're just doing more idiotic things that are getting noticed more. And therefore this is what they all lump us into this.
well,
But it is
also
so shameful.
the right wing manages to inspire loyalty and homogeneity, right? They tend to vote along the same lines. They tend to follow leadership, whereas on the left, it's all herding cats. I mean, hell,
Yeah,
just look at the Bernie versus Biden thing going on. Even now, like I feel icky being told to vote for Joe Biden, but when I try to explain to people why I won't, they won't hear it. They just go, oh, you're just a Trump lover or whatever. Or, oh, you just want 4 more years of Trump. And I'm like, well, okay, but I'm looking to the future. And I realize that when we have these weak ass milk toast presidents that are basically center right, for even our country, never mind the way the rest of the world looks at us, where Bernie Sanders is a centrist. The next time, like I hear interviews of people who were Obama voters who voted for Trump just because they didn't want the status quo anymore. And Trump was promising a populist change. He was lying, but he was promising it. And so people were like, fine, I'll vote for this guy. And now they regret it. There's interviews of people saying, yes, I really regret that vote, but I couldn't do more of Hillary.
yeah,
And now Biden is basically just Hillary with a penis in terms of policy, and he's senile, and he's handsy, and he's at least allegedly a rapist. And people are not realizing why I might object to that. Because number one, he's going to be doing things in office when he's elected. But number two, we're going to have to deal with the aftermath of his presidency. And are we going to get like the next Bernie Sanders, or is it going to be moving even further right because people are like, well, I can't rely on the left,
yeah,
So I'm not willing to really look at the Democrats anymore. I will vote third party because I can't in good conscience vote against my own self-interests. And like both Biden and Trump are that. Neither one of them are doing anything other than paying lip service at best to the things that matter to me most.
yeah.
So,
No, the unfortunate thing is that the right seems to be able to put in someone like Trump, who is super duper, well, his base at least is super duper right. But on the left, we're kind of pussies, and we won't put in someone like Sanders because we're too afraid to lose. So let's put in Biden.
well, and honestly, I think part of the problem is just who does and doesn't vote, and also who can and can't vote, actually, because we needed the young to get out and vote to nominate Bernie Sanders, and they didn't. And that's been a chronic problem since forever, is just young people don't get their asses out to vote. Whereas older people tend to vote all the time and tend to vote a little more conservatively or centrist than the youth do. And that's one of the major factors in why Bernie Sanders isn't our nominee right now. What can you do about it? You know? I
so
voted. I got my ass out and voted. And I also mentioned the who can and can't vote. I mean, obviously gerrymandering and removing polling locations. You hear stories about people who spent 6, 7, 8 hours in line and were still turned away at the polls. And that is happening in predominantly like areas with people who have darker skin. Gee, who'd have thunk it, right? So, I mean,
they closed down so many urban polling stations in Georgia that Black people just pretty much can't vote in bigger cities. It's fucking ridiculous.
And then, of course, you look at the right wing as saying, well, no, we can't allow voting by mail. That can't be allowed.
Even though Trump votes by mail.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, Trump himself said if we let people vote by mail, Republicans will never win an election again. I mean, he said that where people could hear him. And it's like, boy, is that ever telling.
And there's no proof whatsoever of what he's claiming, but they're pushing that rhetoric because it'll help them. So, but anyway, we've been over an hour, so and it's okay that we went off topic. It's kind of my show. We have a topic, but then we go on tangents, so don't feel bad about that.
It's kind of like when I'm on Diana's shows, actually. It starts with 10 minutes of a topic, and then we're just talking about whatever the hell, And I did actually do like 4 hours on her show earlier this morning. I'm kind of worn out.
But I appreciate you coming, and I hope you come
I didn't react that strongly. No, I was grateful for the invite. I like being here. It's fun to have these chats. I actually like being on shows more than watching them. I honestly don't know why people watch us just gabbing, but hey, if that's what floats your ducky. But no, I was glad to be here. I really was.
Thank you. Is there anything coming up for you that you want to show really quick?
Not really. I mean, I will probably be making a new video tomorrow, maybe, unless I get caught up in my animation stuff. Usually what I do is I just scour the internet for various search terms like religion, atheism, whatever, and see who's being an idiot. I also might go looking at some of the channels of people I've responded to already. Like, for example, the dude dressed up in the monk outfit where he looks like he's about 20 years old. I've been calling him Brother Scooter. I would love to answer one of his videos again, just because it's hilarious. But I don't have anything planned specifically yet. No, just like I have been trying to gather together minions and weapons to execute anyone who doesn't subscribe to my channel. So fear me and click subscribe. But other than that, no, nothing really coming up.
Okay, and I will make sure to put your link in the description, although can't imagine anybody that watches my show isn't subscribed to yours. So
no, building up my subscriber base has been an uphill slog, and right now I've plateaued, and I don't know why. Although I did notice the other day that I'm unsubscribed from Purple Rhymes with Orange.
Yeah, that's not happening.
And I had to resubscribe, and I don't know what happened. I'm hoping that it's not that I stink, but rather that people are getting unsubbed. And because, I've been hovering at about 25,000 subscribers for years now, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
No, MathPig went to go on my channel the other day. It was like a couple weeks ago, and was like, and he wasn't subscribed. And he's like, that's ridiculous. So that has happened. It happened to me too on a couple channels. And I think that part is part of the issue, because if you're not subbed, you're not getting a notification. So, but I will make sure everybody here is subscribed to you. I promise. And
awesome.
Thank you so much for coming. And I hope you come back soon.
Just let me know. I'm around.
Yes. Anytime, and we'll try different topics, but we'll usually go on tangent. It's fine.
Okay.
And thanks for everybody in the chat for coming, and I will see you next time. Think critically.
Catch you like the plague.
Bye, everyone.